Chemistry 11. Final exam. Remember, it's 20% or it's 100%. When is it 100%? Sorry? When would it be 100% of your mark? If it's higher than your actual mark in the class. Okay, then I'll just give you that. So if you have 80 going in, you score a 95 on the final exam, take the 95 and run. Okay? So, what's on the final exam? There are 50 multiple choice questions. All right? There's also short answer, but we're just going to talk about the multiple choice right now. Now, 50 may seem like a lot, but some of those are like theory questions. So they're meant to be done pretty quickly. Some you have to do some simple calculations, but the big long questions are in the long answer part. Okay? So yes, 50 is a fair amount, but some of them you'll just be able to answer fairly quickly. Like, here's a reaction. What type of reaction is this? Synthesis, decomp, combustion, whatever. So that's, you just circle the answer. You don't have to do anything. Okay, so there's some theory stuff. All right, but specifically what is on this test? So sig figs. Remember sig figs? Way back? Well, there's only 3 questions. 3 multiple choice questions on the whole test. That's all you have to know about sig figs. And I'm going to outline, I'll do in-depth reviews of each section as well. This is just an outline of what's on the test, okay? Naming. So there's only actually 3 questions on naming where I'm literally like, here's a compound, what's the name of it? Okay? But, and this is the inorganic naming, not the organic separate. But the reason I'm going to go over naming is because through the whole test, if you don't know how to name a molecule, a lot of the test isn't going to make sense to you. Okay, so we have to be comfortable with naming. And then you get into the actual chemistry. So we talked about the mole first. There's 13 questions around the mole. Okay. Sorry? You're going to get a data booklet. Like molarity and stuff? No. You can go into lunch, but that's about it. So an example would be the number of atoms or molecules in 5 moles of a substance, or 5 grams of a substance. Okay, so know how to do that conversion. I'll do, like I said, in-depth review of each section starting today, but this is just an outline. What's STP? Temperature and pressure, right? It's for gases. Okay. What is the number associated with STP? 22.4 what? Liters per mole. All right. 1 mole is 22.4 liters of a gas. It measures the volume, right? It's 4 gases, not liquids. All right. It's 4 gases. What's Avogadro's number? There it is right there. 6.02 times 10 to the 23. What? Particles or molecules or atoms per mole, right? I'm going to say particles. But particles can mean atoms or molecules. Depends on what you're talking about. There'll be a percent composition question. I'll talk more about that today. An empirical formula question. I'll talk more about that today. And a concentration question, which is molarity is moles per liter. Okay. All right. So you need to understand the mole. That's a big chunk of this course. Next thing we did was chemical reactions and stoichiometry. There's 13 questions on that. So I will ask you to balance some equations. Predict products. In the multiple choice, it'll be simple stoic problems. We'll talk about those later. And how to find the limiting reagent and stuff like that. We'll do an example of that later too. Okay, I'll do examples of these types of problems. Sorry, I should say reaction types as well. And we'll talk about that. Okay. So balancing equations, predicting products, simple stoichiometry, limiting reagents, reaction types. Those are the things that would be in that section. You have 13 questions on that kind of stuff. Then we get into atomic theory and bonding. There's 8 questions on this. So this is where we looked at electron configurations. Remember the 1s2, the 2s2, 3p6, all that kind of fun stuff. Know how to determine number of protons. This is going back to grade 10, but kind of important. Neutrons and electrons into something. Periodic table trends. So how does where's the highest electronegative atom? What is it? Fluorine, right? Electronegativity increases going to the right and going up. Okay? So things like that. So that would be a literal question. How does what's the trend of electronegativity on the periodic table? What happens to the size of a molecule as you move across left to right? They get smaller, right? And as you go down, they get bigger. Okay. Things like that. Okay. Then there's solution chemistry. Are we on? Yeah. There's only 3 questions on that. So this is the dissociation equations. The net ionic, like when you produce a precipitate and things like that, how to predict how to predict precipitates. I'm gonna say that slowly. Okay. Say it slowly. Dissociation equations. I'll go over this stuff. Possible precipitates. ion concentration. So remember, the square brackets mean concentration. And so the ion concentration questions are like, if I mix, I don't know, I don't want to do a full example, but if I mix 1.5 molar of aluminum chloride with, I don't know, 2 molar sodium chloride, and I'd have to give you volumes as well. And I said, what is the concentration of the chlorine ion? Okay, so they're going to change and things like that. We'll go over those specific examples. And then the final one is 7 questions on organic chem. So basically, it's just naming. And you just wrote a test on this. Organic chem, 7 questions, naming. So I'll just give you some molecules and I'll say, what's the name of these? And you just pick the right one. Okay, and we just did that. So you should be fairly comfortable with that. That's the multiple choice section. All right. Then you move on to the short answer. All right. The short answer is or written answer, long answer is 37-ish marks. Those are marks, not questions. Okay? Because these are the questions that are worth multiple marks. Okay? And I say ish because I might tweak how I'm dividing it up. I haven't finalized, but it's basically there. So I will ask you to draw some Lewis structures. 2, okay? And name the structure. So that was tetrahedral, planar, linear, those things. And if it's polar or not. And that has to do with the symmetry, all right? So there's 6 marks there. 2 of them, each one's worth 3 marks. You'll get a mark for the Lewis structure, a mark for the name, and a mark for saying if it's polar or non-polar, times 2. So 6. All right. Then there's a reaction that you'll have to name and do some stoichiometry on it. I'll go over stoichiometry today. That's a 5-mark question. So there's parts. That question, I think it has 3 parts to it. Okay. A percent composition question. I'll go over that type today or tomorrow. That is a 3-mark question. There's a solution. Make a solution of a certain concentration. How much of the substance do you need? So you have to know molarity, molar mass, blah, 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 blah. There's a question on limiting reagents. How much left? That kind of stuff. I'll do examples of those tomorrow, most likely tomorrow. There's a titration question. Basically, so remember when we did titrations and I give you a concentration and I say you add this much, I don't know, hydrochloric acid. If you have the reaction, you can figure out what the concentration of the sodium hydroxide was in the question. I can give you practice questions like that. There's an ion concentration question, but it's going to be more in depth than the one that's in the multiple choice. Okay, and we'll talk about that. And then the last 2, you have an energy diagram. Exo versus endo. So I'll give you a reaction. You have to draw the energy diagram. But in general, an energy diagram looks like this. There's 2 types. what's the main difference between the two types? What type of reaction is this? Endo or exo? Endothermic. And this is exothermic. And delta H is a measure of how much energy was released or absorbed, right? So is delta H positive or negative in the first one? Positive, because we had to add energy into it. In the second one, there's your delta H, and it's negative because energy was released. Okay, so the second one are your explosions and things like that, big fireballs. They release a bunch of energy, the ones that you kind of like. And then the last question is you'll have to list some atoms, ions in order of size. Atomic radius order. Order atoms, ions in atomic radius size. I don't know if that makes sense. But basically, I give you some 3 or 4 atoms, ions, and I say list them from smallest to largest or largest to smallest or whatever. Okay? And that is your test. If you know what you're doing, it shouldn't take 3 hours. My plan is if you know what you're doing, it's like the fast people, 1 hour 45 to 50. The slower people, 2.5 hours. Because everybody writes them at different speeds, so you have to kind of judge. The thing is, the multiple choice is meant to be done fairly quickly. There are some calculations, but a lot of it, like especially when you're in the chemical reactions, like 3 or 4 of the questions are like, here's a reaction. What type of reaction is this? So you have to know what the types of reactions are. Or it's a simple balancing. Or if, I don't know, what's the limiting reagent? I'll show you how to do that. That's a simple calculation that you can do fairly quickly, given some information. So the multiple choice is meant to be done fairly quickly. Yes. This is a video, so I will post the video.